Hi guys, welcome to the channel. In today's video we are going to manually retopologize a hand. Here I have a high poly mesh which I sculpted in another video. This has about 750,000 vertices and I want to reduce the poly count so I can texture paint it and rig it for a simple pose. Here's the result of this video. Looks exactly the same, but when I tab into edit mode, you'll see it is only made up of 550 vertices and has some edge loops that go all around the fingers that make it better for rigging. Now just a small disclaimer, I am just a hobbyist, so this is not professional level topology or edge flow, ready for a Pixar animation reel. But I have found that this generally works for simple rigging and posing and is not too complicated. Okay, so a quick setup before we begin. I'm going to Shift A to add in a single vertex. You can access this by enabling the Extra Objects add-on in the Edit Preferences menu, or just add a plane and merge all the vertices. Then up to the top here and turning on Snap to Face with Project Individual Elements enabled. Now I'm going to move the vertex over the index finger and place it kind of in the middle here. Then I'm going to extrude a vertex out and down, and then extrude a plane out to the side. Up in the matte cap options, I'm going to turn on back face culling. This makes the viewport a little less busy and easier to look at when doing this. And then over to the materials tab, you can add a material if you'd like. This will make things easier to see in the viewport. This is optional, obviously. Sometimes I find I don't really need this, but it can be helpful. I'm going to scroll down and change the viewport display color and not the base color. I'm going to change it to something bright like pink to make it easier to see. Now back to the modifiers, I'm going to add a shrink wrap modifier and then I'm going to select the high poly hand mesh as the target. You can play with the offset here to make the retopology mesh easier to see, or even add a displacement modifier as well. I don't feel like I particularly need it, but again, it can be helpful sometimes. Okay, so let's get started with the index finger. We will do just this first finger and then copy it over to the others to make things easier and speed the process up. For this one, I'm going to use the Poly Build tool to help with the retopology process. You can enable it by pressing over here on the toolbar. You'll now see the edges and vertices of the mesh highlight blue as you hover over them. The first feature is with an edge highlighted. If you left mouse button, it will automatically create a quad face for you. Another feature is if you have a corner vertex like this, hover over it until it turns blue, and then press Ctrl and left mouse button, and it will automatically create a quad face for you. You'll notice that the snap to face doesn't work here. Another feature of the Poly Build tool is that simply left clicking on a vertex will enable you to move it rather than having to press G. This means clicking on any vertex will cause it to snap to face if you encounter this problem. I was reading that actually turning off the snap to face up at the top will allow the Poly Build tool to then snap to face itself, as you'll see here. But for some reason I just couldn't get it to work when moving vertices, which I also wanted in this case. As a result, I end up leaving snap to face on. You can also delete vertices and edges by pressing Shift and left mouse button. The edge or vertex will turn red to indicate this. Okay, we're going to start with wrapping the finger. We want to have 8 faces going around with 2 faces on each of the 4 sides of the finger. Right now we have 4 faces, so let's make the other 4. You may find it difficult to see in tight spaces like in between the fingers. So to help a little bit with that, you can press Alt-B to set the clipping region in the viewport like this. So now we have 7 faces. Let's make the last one to join up with the first. I'm going to pull the edge out like this and try and get the vertices to overlap. A useful feature to use is the auto merge option. You can turn it on up here. You can see as the vertices get close, they automatically merge into one, which helps in forming quad faces a little bit faster. Sometimes it can be difficult to get them to grab. If that's the case, you can press N on your keyboard and then in the tool menu, tick auto merge. If you expand this menu, you can increase the threshold distance so that the two vertices do not have to be as close together before they merge automatically. Okay, so we have 8 faces now, but I want there to be 2 faces on each of the 4 sides of the finger with an edge going down the middle of each side. So I'm going to pull them around a bit to get that alignment. Try and line up your edges with where the fingers bend. You can get really fancy here by introducing some knife cuts and triangles and different patches to make the fingers and other joints bend even better, but for my purposes, this is usually sufficient. Okay, so let's do the fingertip now. I want an edge loop to run nicely around the length of each finger and the thumb to make the rigging and posing a little bit smoother. Okay, so now you can see there's a nice edge loop that runs all along the edge of the finger. To facilitate better bending of the fingers, you can add some edge loops on either side by pressing Ctrl R. You can align them to either edge by pressing E and F if you want. Again, there are some more advanced techniques like introducing knife cuts and triangles or different Pixar patches to make things bend a little bit better, but I typically find that this is sufficient for my simple poses. Okay, so now onto the other fingers. I'm just going to select all the vertices by pressing A and then Shift D to duplicate. Make sure you turn off snap to face before doing this or your mesh will be flattened. Then I'll move and scale it over the next finger. Once it's loosely positioned over the finger, I'm going to turn snap to face back on. Then I'm going to go and select these rows of vertices by selecting one vertex on the end and then holding Control. I'm going to select the vertex at the other end of the row. This will select all the vertices between the two along the shortest path. You can also Alt left click here as well. With these vertices selected, I'm then going to press G to snap them to the surface of this finger and tighten things up a little bit. If you want to shift the bend loops we have in place to better align with each finger, turn off snap to face, then Alt left click the loop, then press G twice to edge slide it down. Now onto the ring and pinky fingers. Doing the same as before, turning off snap to face and Shift D to duplicate the finger mesh over, then turning snap to face back on and adjusting the vertices around to better align with the given finger. Okay, so now we're ready to connect the fingers. I'm going to connect them along this middle edge running through the tip of the finger. You can check to make sure you have the middle edge selected by counting the faces on either side. You should have 4 faces on both sides. Okay, so now I'm going to select the middle edge loop on the other finger to see if I need to line them up. Here they look pretty close, so that's good. We can now create 2 faces in between the fingers to form the webbing of the hand. I'm also going to add a control loop in the middle here as well. Now I'm going to do the same thing between the other fingers. Select the middle edge running through the tip of the finger with 4 faces on each side of the loop. Line them up, then create 2 faces in between with a control loop. You can see here the first edge I select is actually not the middle edge, since it does not have 4 faces on each side. I eventually figure this out and find that the middle edge of this finger turns out to be quite far away from the middle edge of the other, so I need to move things over a bit before connecting them. And then again for the pinky finger, some small adjustments to be made before connecting. Okay, so now you should have one edge loop running through the fingers like this. Now onto the thumb, same as for the other fingers earlier. Now I'm going to connect the thumb in a similar fashion as the other fingers by connecting the middle edges of the thumb and index finger like this. I'm going to use 4 faces in between the thumb and index finger here. Should be good for my needs. Now we should have the middle edge loop continuing through all the fingers and the thumb like this. Now I'm just going to create one more contained loop around the base of the thumb. Check that it is contained by pressing Ctrl R and make sure it goes around and doesn't spiral out of control. So now we have a loop around the base of the thumb and 2 above the fingers. Now I'm going to space out some of the vertices a bit to get better uniformity in the topology. Okay, with the retopology done, let's shrink wrap it onto the high poly mesh. I'm going to go up and shade smooth the low poly object, and then over on the modifier panel, I'm going to add a multi-resolution modifier. I'm going to move it to the top of the stack and then subdivide a few times to get some more resolution. Now down in the shrink wrap modifier, I'm going to change the wrap method to project. And then tick the negative box down below. And that's it, there you have it, a low poly hand with the details of a high poly one. Like I said before, this should be decent enough topology to do some basic rigging and posing. Hit me up on social media and show me what you ended up with, or let me know if I messed up somewhere. Thanks for watching guys, I hope it helped, and see you in the next one.